I just looked at your bio and you played in Abbotsford 94, 95. It's under 18 hockey. How old were you?
So that was the old Bantam. So I was 15. It was the Bantam before they changed it to U15. So that was the last year before uh turning 16 going to the Western League.
And then the thing I note is you played 5 years with the Hitmen. Now, you weren't drafted in the Bantam draft, eh?
No, I was not. I think I was listed that year early on.
Can you tell us a little bit about uh, you didn't move out to Abbotsford and play, did you? Or is that where you
No, that was my minor hockey team the whole time. So I grew up, I played all my minor hockey there.
okay. You ended up with the Hitmen for 5 years. You always had a lot of points, I can see, every place you played. Um, can you just tell us and the people who might be listening, um, the experience of going through, not getting drafted, then playing junior A, literally, and then playing 5 years with the Hitmen? Just about the learning experience what that was for you, because you really, not many people do that. They all sort of get all fixated on the draft, and if they're drafted, they there's a big thing with that, and you just they spotted you. Maybe the draft wasn't as significant in that day. Just go ahead and tell us a bit about your junior career.
No, yeah, I don't know if it was as publicized the draft, but it was definitely kids knew about it. I think you had to read it in the newspaper to find out if you were drafted. So, it was as a kid, it was pretty disappointing at the time, but you just kind of keep playing. And for me, it was a lot of motivation, obviously. And fortunately, I think come the next year, and I've seen it now, and I've seen it honestly. I've seen it full circle here now because I got a son who wasn't drafted and who just became listed after the draft. So it's kind of seeing the full circle and the disappointment for him. And you see your peers that you believe you're as good at or better than being selected. So you have those questions, but just to stick with it, and it's interesting after the fact now that being in hockey, you talk to some of the scouts that are still with teams that scouted back then, and like, oh, we were close, we were going to try to list you, but that's kind of how it worked out, and fortunately came here to a brand new team in Calgary where the benefit for me was the team was not good, but it allowed me to get ice time as a young player, and kind of continue to grow and go through it that way.
What year were you born?
79.
79?
Mhm.
I should say about Curtis, he played for the Oilers and he coached the Oilers too. And he does all kinds of training with players. So
Okay, Brad. Curtis, if you've got any questions, just feel free to ask. We had coffee with Brad a couple weeks ago, and I really wanted to delve into some details here. He just managed to win the Centennial Cup and learned a lot from that. And Dad, I was curious about your background, and maybe Curtis, you can mention yours. Um, you obviously played minor hockey, and I can see in your career you played a lot of different places, um, Brad. Different countries, different leagues, American League each, um, in England, Europe, all of those different places, those experiences. What was the decision that finally made you go to Europe? Like you went to Syracuse first, Columbus, Syracuse a couple of years, Columbus again, Syracuse. Syracuse, and then you went to Lagno.
Yeah, I think, just at that time they were starting to pay guys pretty good over in Europe and explore that side of it. And the American League is a grind. It's fun, but it's a grind. And an opportunity came up, and honestly, there was some history of guys going over there. I remember Wes Walls was a guy I believe that went over to Europe and then came back and was successful in the NHL. So for me, skating was my downfall, so to say. So getting over there, a little bit bigger ice and giving it a try, it was good, and then had opportunities to come back. So kind of just at that point started to just do different things. I think you start to move past the NHL and see what's best for you and your family. And we had good opportunities in good places, and we kind of just went along for the ride. And very fortunate to be able to make a living of it for so many years.
Yeah. How'd you get into coaching? When did you start? Where did you start? And how did you end up with the Canucks?
I think I was always a student of the game, so to say. We didn't have a ton of video in junior, but when we did, we could really use it, especially on the power play. I remember we had Dean Evison come in uh, for the playoffs one year when we won the Western League, and he kind of worked with me in our power play and offense a little bit. So started to learn a little bit on the video side there. And the funny thing is when you go to Europe, it was much different. And I remember my first time in Sweden, the coach called me in and gave me the marker and said, "What's your power play? What's your breakout?" The five guys. He said, "You guys figure it out." And that's kind of a different thing than you see over here, where I saw in the American League. It was like, "This is what you're doing. Do it." And over there, they gave us a little bit of creativity and enjoyed that. And always kind of, as you get older, you kind of take on that mentorship role, um, especially in the American League, where you're working with younger guys. I think it started in Manitoba with say a Mason Raymond or a Yannick Hansen, for instance, and you understand that part of why you can keep playing and being valuable is you're an asset for them and working with those kind of players, and it just progressed from there. And then just retiring back in Calgary after the game, it was trying to get into hockey, and there was an assistant position with the Canucks, and I think Kerry Bracco would put my name forward, and started there. And things happen quick once you get in the door. And 7 years or 8 years later, now I'm still here.
Brad, I'm curious because when you talked about Manitoba Moose, you were playing, and when you talked about video, you were playing, and the coach engaged you, the players, in designing the power play. Is that right?
That was in Sweden, so that
Uh,
was my first experience in Sweden.
And when you did that, now I noticed last year your power play was exceptional. Did you adopt some of that ability to engage the players more rather than tell them? Because I'm from the era, and I'm sure Curtis and Tom were, where it was all diagrammed and people put in their specific areas and roles and executed the power play structure. So, did you do it differently because of that experience? And just tell us a bit about what you did, because having watched the Centennial Cup, your power play was impressive.
I I think it's working with them. I think as they're young and in junior, they're still asking the questions. They want to know what to do, but uh, I think for me the big part was, and we learned this early on, is we have to design a power play or a system that works best for the players we have and the skill level we have in each position. Um, we had some guys in similar positions for a couple of years, and that helped us fill in what we needed to. But give them, I like to give them the guidelines, and if we see things, here's things to look for, and they execute it pretty well. But they have to be skilled enough to see them themselves and adapt during the game as well, in my opinion.
Well, another thing on that, the players designing things, Brad, I've been to Finland. I worked with a Finnish coach for a long time, and he was coaching TPS. That's where Koivu's are from, and he was coaching them, and players went to him and said, our power play sucks." And he said, "Well, you guys get together and design something." So they came up with a 1-3-1, and maybe one of them had played basketball because it was really common in basketball. And it used to be just the Finns. It started getting called the Finnish power play, and I go to World Championships. Just the Finns used it, and then it got all through Europe. Of course, now everybody uses it. But that was a player-designed power play.
Well, Brad, you played a 1-3-1. Was it a type of thing like that or a variation?
Yeah, I think our one unit was essentially a 1-3-1, and when they executed it, it rotates to an overload, and guys are moving around, and tried to take actually a little bit from the Winnipeg Jets, how they had the movement within. If it wasn't working, guys would just kind of switch positions without the puck and create some deception or misinformation for the penalty kill. But for the most part, you could see when guys got in the wrong spots, they almost became specialized, which I wish they could, interchange a little bit more and understand the other positions. But we had two guys. We had a net front guy as a right-handed guy that we thought was important, and our top guy was right-handed, and then the other three lefty forwards could kind of interchange. But when they move the puck and they keep it simple, I think it can be pretty effective. It oftentimes came down to how quick we move the puck, and you get from there, everything seemed to go well.
Well, Brad, one of the things Tom and I have been talking about for a few years, it's not just the power play in the interchange of position. We feel that back in our era and maybe your area, you played center or wing or right D or left D and sort of stayed in your lanes and played north south. And now the only time you line up in a position is for a face off, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hockey. 4 or 5 because the defense are often on the attack or leading the attack, depending on what happens in the game situation. So, where's your mind in terms of the interchangeability 5-on-5? Is it there yet, or um,
I think in certain situations, it's actually it can be frustrating at the start of the year when we first start and we're doing a back checking drill or you're defending and the wingers want to just go to their spots and their first guy back. Like, no, we don't do that here. Like, you're smart enough, you have to be the low guy. You fill in certain positions. We like to obviously have our D play defense in our own zone, but offensively, no problem. I think we have to interchange, and guys have to understand when to cover for each other, but also get to areas. I think if that player gets in trouble, there might not be a pass. Where is he putting the puck that only we can get it back and continue our offense?
Well, the Edmonton coach, who's the guy that coaches their power play, used to be Calgary's head coach.
Gulletson.
Yeah, I listened to him talk, and he said one important thing is you try to score in the rush. You just don't go to your spots and set like chess pieces. Try to score in the rush and then win the loose puck and then get going.
Rush, and I find quickly off the face-off before teams get set up. A lot of teams are good when they get in their structure.
Yeah.
well, let's get on with you getting into coaching then. Where did you start, and how did you get to you talked about Kerry and the Canucks, but did you coach minor hockey at all, or just your kid growing up? And did you coach junior midget or anything like that before you jumped into?
I had I had ran hockey schools in that sense and worked with, towards the end of my career, ran some ice times in the summers, worked with some higher level kids, but coached minor hockey. I coached my sons. They would have been, younger than U11. maybe U13, but um, just kind of came in as a part-time assistant coach. And as I said, things happened quickly. Within 2 months, something happened, and the team was Canucks had struggles back then, and they asked me to take over for the rest of the year and get them through the season, and we did that. And we had some rough years. There's lots of turnover, and it kind of became a driving factor to kind of turn the organization around. I remember in the '90s when they were dominating, and there's no reason they couldn't. They needed some support off ice, and they got that in place, and we were able to kind of grow it through worst to first, essentially, and that's the rewarding side of it.
Now, one of the things in your title, when did you become a GM? When did you take on more responsibility, and how did that impact the success of the transition?
Um, Quite early on, I think, right when I took over as head coach 2 months in, I got a quick tutorial from another GM on how to do everything, and um, worked with another guy kind of on that side of it, and then pretty much learn on the fly. And obviously had support from guys, but there was, we had no scouts. We had to put scouting together. We had to get recruiting, and that was a big part of what we were missing. And the GM side, I think the team was better when we were able to add, I think, more coaches to the staff that could take a bigger load on the coaching side as well. And then it really flourished, obviously, in the last couple of years.
Brad, that's one of the areas that I've impressed me during the Centennial Cup. You had a coaching staff, and uh, it appeared to work well together. How long did it take to establish the staff that you ended up with and reach that level of communication where you could work so well together?
I think it came quite quickly. I think, and I think the key one would be Matt Robinson on defense. He came in mid-season a few years back, but a really sharp mind for the game. And as you know, when you sit down with a hockey guy and you start talking hockey, things can click pretty quickly, even if you don't know the person. So I think early on, I think as he gained more confidence to speak up and what he thinks he would see, I think two kind of minds that see the game and little adjustments that can help a team. We kind of work together on that on the game plans, especially. Um, and then we have guys in the stands as well, but I think we made those decisions. But we could work together on the bench on different things as well, like real time, which I think was a benefit.
I'd say we were pretty fortunate to have a guy on the bench that you could confide in. And like over many years, in terms of working with assistants, I wasn't confident enough myself to confide in anybody, and I didn't know as much as you as the head coach. So when somebody drops in with a hockey acumen like you had, and him, it to me it was just a perfect match. So we talked about that when we were out for coffee live, and I don't know in terms of all the staffs in the league or any coaching staff in any league that there's that kind of communication and compatibility amongst the staff. Do you know if there are or is it something that's missing or ignored
I,
just
I
by
don't know. I do see guys talking. I think obviously I think there's a good amount of respect for each other in how we're doing it as well. I think a big part is and it's no offense to other guys, but I don't think there's an agenda. I think sometimes I could be wrong, but assistant coaches hold back a little bit. Maybe they want to be a head coach. Maybe they're not playing all their cards. Like you never know what they're what they can be thinking at times, and I've never felt that from my assistant coaches, and I just wonder if that can be something you see. Well, this guy wanted to be the head coach, so he's not fully cooperating or fully invested in making everything run smoothly, and we've never had that. I just think it's something, he was where I would say Matt's grown. My assistant is that now he can tell me when to back down or relax or whatever it is. Hey, just back off the player or back off a referee, and I think that's very valuable that he can do that.
Yeah.
And you get lost in the moment sometime, and sometimes guys need the kick, sometimes they need picked up, and he's very good understanding that. So
Yeah. Well, Wayne Andrews worked for the Canucks, and uh, in back in the day, he was Don Phelps's assistant when the Canucks last won the Memorial Cup. And I'm so curious about the conversation of his role as an assistant. And I don't think that, Don's a different breed of cat coach. He's got his way. He's had success. He won a championship. And hockey in that time was different, really different. Um, I mean, 1994, and I don't know when it started to shift to more skill, but possibly you were sort of playing hockey in the transition period where um, size was more important than ability and hockey IQ.
yeah, I think it changed 5 6 years after, and I think after I turned pro, probably I think we still had the bigger guys, the bigger defense that weren't as mobile, but that was the game kind of in the early 2000s. I think it probably changed after the Flames went to the Stanley Cup final, to be honest, and that was what, 05, 04, 05. So that's what I saw as, and Europe, that was also what made Europe appealing. It was hard, but it wasn't the same grinded out type games that you had over here, and the American League especially is it's a harder game than the NHL, in my opinion, because everybody's going all the time.
I'm sure you're watching the finals here in the Stanley Cup, and I, I think I got to take advantage of you and your thoughts on what the heck's going on at that level in terms of what's happening and how it'll affect you as you move forward coaching.
Yeah, it's interesting, the ins and outs. Like, it's so technical at that level, and the ups and downs. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, everyone's, well, the Oilers had such a bad game, and oddly, we had a similar game in the Centennial Cup where we get hammered 7-2, and you want to see the response, and I'm sure they'll see that tonight. But really good hockey. It's interesting to see how each team plays their game plans. Obviously, Florida on the forecheck and turning pucks over quickly back to the D, and then they're getting pucks to the net with their size. And Edmonton more, I think, strategic, opportunistic when they get those chances on the rush, and obviously use their skill. And both teams' power plays, I think you can see the little breakdowns that lead to the goals, or that they create. So pretty fun to watch.
Yeah. Listen, I'm just going to ask Tom and Curtis if they're watching the NHL playoffs and maybe what they see happening. Anything to add, Tom, to that? Or I think you nailed it pretty well, Brad. Very simply, quickly. And Curtis, any observation from the playoffs?
I think that Brad, he has his finger on the pulse there. From my perspective, when somebody gets dysregulated, um, whether whether it be a player or a group of players or the whole bench. And then you also have a coaching staff. As Brad knows, everything is connected. And it's very easy for us to look at something and saying, okay, why didn't they perform here, perform there? But when we look at the dynamics of the environment, um, a simple PK or a simple power play or a simple um, uh, um, thinking about just, hey, have an attitude, why don't you bounce back? You have to understand the context of the narrative and how many millions of people are watching and commenting, and everybody has an opinion, and there's a lot of noise out there, and it's very difficult to sort out the difference between what's the right signal and what's noise. And I think Brad was alluding to it earlier. When you start to develop that relationship with your staff, now when that coach, that assistant says something, Brad can hear it. Right, Brad?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and earlier, you might not have been able to hear that, right?
Yeah, you block it out or it's an attack. I guess it's how you take it too, right? And it's
Yeah.
I've seen coaches get into it, and that's not a good look either on the
No,
bench anyway.
but people have to understand that look at Pete DeBoer, all right? 1 minute he's riding high and next minute doesn't have a job. All right. And when we look at from our perspective from the outside, right? We don't know what's happening on the inside. But if the game comes up and it's not just a game, whether you're going to win or lose, that was the game. If they don't win that, they're out, their season's over. So the context of the narrative really changes, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter that he's 7-0 in game sevens and you've been to the conference final every year, right? It's
That,
it's
that,
that game.
that's exactly right. That's what I mean. So it's and people don't really understand that. And people that watch the game from a distance say, oh my heavens, you should be so excited to be there. Why can't you play? It doesn't work that way. And we don't spend enough time in our game, in my opinion, working on those skill sets, the ability to have that awareness and have the emotional literacy skills. We always look at the hockey skills, but we don't evaluate or audit the other ones. But that's where most of us lose.
Brad, I want to refer to just this thread of conversation. I was at the game you talked about where your team sort of went off the rails like the Oilers did last night. Um, I don't know if it was a bad game. The Oilers didn't play back to back like you did against a pretty damn good team, which is the Centennial Cup. But you I talked to you about the frustration on the bench, frustration and the bad penalties on the ice, everything the Oilers did. You did, the Oilers did last night. And you bounced back. And I'm curious, as a staff, do you feel that the coaches even have to say anything at the NHL level?
I
The
don't think I don't think they do. I think we didn't have to say too much as well. I think the one thing you need your best players to be your best players, and ours bounced back, and I think it'll be pretty exciting when we see how two of the top players in the world bounce back. And tonight, like I kind of looking forward to that because it again, it doesn't matter if it's 10-0 or if it was overtime. It's one game, and they've been there, and they'll move on. And I think that's the big part of it is you can't dwell on it, and you dig in and you move forward.
Brad, the other thing I wanted to talk about, is because you mentioned his name, Wes Walls, a highly skilled player who went to Europe, came back, I think was given a chance to get back into the league, and he succeeded. Now, I want to share a story with you and the audience about Wes. Uh, Wes was one of many players, and I don't know, Brad, if you came to any of our conditioning camp sessions that we ran back in the day, but he attended those sessions, and in fact, he was quite a bit younger, attending the daily hockey schools like you that we ran, Don Phelps and myself back in our day. And I knew Wes was a good player growing up. I watched him play junior kind of thing, and I got a visit from his dad, who I taught high school with, telling me he was playing in Europe and frustrated. And Dave happened to be coaching the Flames, and he said, "You think you could talk to Dave about giving him a chance?" And I said I would. I knew he had a lot of skill, and Dave had worked with the national team, which was more about skill and IQ hockey than physicality. And Dave gave him a chance and gave him a tryout, and I believe kept him. But eventually he was moved to Minnesota, and Wes shared this with me. He went from being an unbelievable offensive player in junior to becoming one of the best defensive players when he went to Minnesota to play for Jacques Lemaire. And in fact, that really resonated with me. Such a highly skilled player like that, and I guess Eiserman's a similar one who extended his career that way. That players can play any way to help a team, to adapt a team, and um, I don't know that your young players yet have had to buy into 200 feet hockey, or they're still into the skill first mentality. At what age would you start focusing on defensive play and responsibility in a 200-foot game?
I think it's at our level. It's at like for guys to continue to get on the ice in key situations, they have to be somewhat responsible defensively. And I think early on, maybe coaching make the mistake too is understanding that my top offensive guys are going to need a no defense and going to need no penalty killing, because when they go to the next level, if they go to college, they're probably going to start there. So we're not doing them any favors by limiting them all. Everyone wants to be on the power play, and for me, it's you gotta make plays at 5-on-5 to get that opportunity. But most guys can penalty kill if they buy into it, and I think buying into roles even at junior level on good teams will lead to success. Now, that's not saying you can't go out there and create offense. I think it's just understanding when it gets down to winning and losing in the playoffs, it does come down to the little areas of the blue lines and the turnovers and the puck management, and guys that we can trust in those situations probably get a little more opportunity. But we had a lot of guys that it takes a whole year to get guys to understand that. And you can see regular season games sometimes they're like, no, going for points, we're trying stuff, and that's what the season's for. That's what practices are for, is to get to a point where when you're in a one game, we talk about the game we lost in the Centennial Cup, and our next game was if you win, you're in first. If you lost, you're going home, and that's when we wanted to make sure we left nothing to chance and continued to control our destiny there.
I got a question related to the management of the bench, and two things, and I'm not 100% sure what you did, but when I look at the NHL teams and I look at many elite teams, I question the power play people killing penalties. Now, I know they have TV timeouts and you can get your talent out there, but my belief with my limited experience is that affects the team mentality, the emotional um, feeling state of all the players, the bottom end players who are feel bottom and maybe don't play their best. What's your thoughts on playing the best players in both situations or not?
I I try to mix it up and have guys on one or the other as much as I can. Um, centermen face-offs were guys that got extra, obviously. I think I had three guys that did both predominantly, but we'd limit it throughout the year. And I think it also depends on how the game's going. If you got to get more guys involved because you got a ton of penalties, I don't want your top guys on the bench um, for 10-minute stretches. But I've split it up for the most part as much as we can, but and mixed it up if we can get different guys on the power plays or penalty kills throughout the year. I think it's a lead up, and if we're deep enough, you need to have guys that can do different things or jump into roles on injuries or if somebody's not playing well. And we've been able to do that over the last couple of years. Is have the depth where 2 years ago we lost our top player and captain after the second round, and we were able to inject guys that stepped up to go to the final and continue to go to the Centennial Cup.
Now, you're watching the playoffs, and right now, what are you thinking about as a coach? Do you think about what you might do differently in terms of bench management or whatever?
Uh, Not so much that. I'm just watching the little plays or a lot of the missed coverages or even things like you don't think you're going to see at an NHL level. I think it was in the overtime game. You got two defensemen jumping into the rush, missing the pass and breakaway back the other way. It's interesting that the best players, and we show this in our video, is the best players in the world make the same mistakes that our guys are making that lead to scoring or opportunities. They limit them a little bit or they cover, but oftentimes it's the same thing at that level. Um, the execution is higher, but they make the same mistakes. But just watching the little system plays and face off alignments and things like that, I think I watch a lot more now than I did as a player.
Well, it's interesting because I watched the between period commentators, especially the video they go through. Uh, Jennifer Botterill showed a clip of about four face-offs. Um, Incredible face-off execution on the left side offensively for Florida. And the amount of technical and tactical details that they do at that level, it's just amazing. And what happens at your level? Is it complicated, simplified, or?
It's we try to add in as many face-off plays as we can. What we find is on the defensive side, it's a lot of times blown coverages or details of not. We have to continue to harp on play away from the puck. So we win an offensive face-off and our winger doesn't run any interference, or we're doing a PK face-off where we win it back and we bump it to the weak side corner for our winger, but our defenseman didn't hold up the guy in front. And it's continuing to remind those little plays in those situations. So it we try to add in plays, and we've seen plays work because you can catch teams, but it sometimes it's information overload. I guess it just goes back to the habits and the communication. We tell guys we played a team that their centerman quite often would try to go forward and hit a guy back door. And, you tell them over and over and over, but you're tired. There's an icing. Guys don't talk about it. And those things happen.
Yeah. Incredible details at that level, even, Brad. I'm really impressed with that. And just trying to get back to the level. Tom's been there at higher levels, but now coaching young girls, the game's a lot more simplified. But basically, we're just trying to get them to keep their heads up and their eyes up and looking and scanning to make decisions. The vision of players growing up, and your son, as a minor hockey player, now getting into Bantam, and I'm finding, and you might be able to speak more to this than anybody, is in minor hockey, whether it's the boys' side or the girls' side, there's no hockey sense. Nobody plays the game, sees the game, and makes teammates with them better by sharing the puck. Is that a generalization fair?
Absolutely. And I think it unfortunately stems, I think, from trying, I think that it's the draft. First off, you've got kids that think they need to, they go to a tryout and they have to do it all themselves. They have to carry the puck. They have to score the goals. And I've seen it even in meaningless tryouts. And it's like, well, if this guy would just pass the puck, and it's frustrating to watch. That I don't know if it's that they're allowed to do it and it's let slide, or if they're told to play a certain way that maybe won't help them in the long run, but it might help them win that game. And it's those little things. It's frustrating to watch. And you mentioned it the other day. Is like just headman the puck. You're going to get it back. Headman the puck. And everyone else is standing, waiting, or you're offside and becomes a 1-on-2. A lot of one-on-one hockey. I think a lot of young kids hold the puck until they're dead in the water, and then they try to move it instead of moving it and then give and go, or moving it, making plays while they're there. Everything closes off, and you got to make that perfect play or no play.
Well, the three of us, Tom and I, and you are of the same mindset. Uh, I can't watch, like I've watched spring hockey because many of the young girls that I'm mentoring with Girls Hockey Calgary are playing on different teams. And I remember a year ago watching a spring hockey game where it was a U15 team. It was first year U15 players, girls playing Team China, a team from Peking. And the game was embarrassing because the Chinese team moved the puck, like to the degree that I was shocked. And we were playing one-on-one hockey. And Tom, he doesn't go to watch games now because you can't watch. You know, it's frustrating watching games because you see things that are elementary that will help them, and the players are sort of deemed as being selfish. I don't think they are. I don't think they really understand the value of using one another. And I'm not sure watching your son play whether you get frustrated watching me of the same thing or not, but can you comment?
Absolutely. Yeah. Same thing. So there'll be games I'll want to leave.
Yeah.
It's like, because it could be so simple, and it's the passing and receiving it's okay because they're highly skilled, but just the IQ to know when to move that puck lacks. And you see guys in great scoring chances, but they won't move the puck, or the too quick plays, or defensemen not wanting to break pucks out. They just want to skate it and flip it off the glass. And I'm like, just why these are guys that are supposed to be coming to us in a year, and we can't find guys that can break pucks out, or make plays because they're not allowed, or they're not told, or they I don't know. So it's can be frustrating, and it is fun when you actually see a team that does move the puck. And they might make some mistakes doing it, but it's fun to watch. There's certain games when they kind of, it's like, well, after it's like, you guys played so good and moving the pucks, and everyone's going, and then it just disappears again. So it's up and down. They have the ability. It's just, will they buy into it?
You use the term up and down. How consistent would you say the play of your team is?
I think we harped on that. I think for us, it was everything about our year. We knew we'd been to the Centennial Cup the year before, and we knew we needed to win 5 or 6 games in a row. And for me, it's always that be consistently good. We need everyone. We can't have half the guys at 100 and 2 guys at 60. We need everyone above 80% all the time. Be consistently good, and then everything else will take care of itself. So it's challenging. There's ups and downs, but we try to harp on it in practice so that if practice was good, execution was good, and it comes down to concentration. We'll do passing drills, and you know if they're concentrating, it's good. If they don't, it's not. And we had a few drills where we would slow it down early in the year, and it was just about receiving and passing. If they couldn't get it, we had to do some skating and then try again and make them do it tired, and even challenge them mentally with different games and bad calls, and you push their patience, so to say, so that when things go wrong, we could be ready for that come playoff time, come Centennial Cup time.
I'm not sure if we talked about this, but Tom, he was coaching a U13 team. Gosh, it might have been 4 years ago, Tom. And he had a parent keep statistics because she's a little bit vocal in the stands, and we wanted to keep her busy. And she kept track of the usual shots, but detailed, circle goals, and if the name was left blank, it missed the net, 1 line, 2 lines. But she kept track of completed passes. This was at U13. And that team that year, I watched play a game, one shift, in a shift. They made 7 consecutive passes. And they played in a boys' league which they dominated because they passed the puck. And the ratio would be 50 completed passes to 10 on the boys' side. So to me, that really added to my appreciation of this. What we're talking about is the puck can let the puck do the work, and you can be checked. Tom, can you talk about that, because you've spent a lot of time on it and you've learned it from your European experience with the Finns, and then coming back now to the girls full circle?
It's always been a thing I stress, because anybody that's ever played a half decent level of hockey, you don't win your one-on-ones all over the place, right? You don't just walk through them all. And so we start off with kind of to get, like, I can't pass you the puck if you don't get open, right? And vice versa. So we start off with things like, we'll play full ice, and there has to be at least 1 pass in each zone. And we'll progress that out, 2 seconds with a puck, or we'll play, a game at each end, and there has to be so many passes before you can score, or goals only come on given goals. And we just keep on harping on the same thing all the time. And our theme is that the player in the best position should have the puck. So if you're in the best position, you look around, nobody's open, you carry the puck. So you don't have to pass the puck. You don't always have to defer. Like that girl that lost against the U.S. I don't know if you remember, but she kind of thought, I have to pass the puck. And she passed right to American, who passed across, and they got eliminated. So if nobody's in good position, in better position than you got to carry it. So it's kind of the theme that we go on, and some, most players get it, but some don't. Some still, and I think their parents are involved. They think they have to go through the world all the time. And one thing that came across, I was just in Stockholm at the World Championship in the coaching conference, and a couple of guys got up there and said the players they're doing so much individual work around pylons and the puck under something and jumping over and all this sort of thing, that they don't get their heads up. So you can be open, but they don't see you. And we've all played with players like that, right? You could try, they don't even know you're open because they never looked. So that's a problem with a lot of this skill development, I think, with private guys.
We take it takes us a couple months, and we started from day one is pass reception. For me, is guys can't take passes properly,
That's
and
probably the
then
weakest thing, eh? Is taking
and
the
then
pass.
especially backhand, but even forehand, it's flipping up. They've got their sticks wrong. They're not ready for the next play is the next one. So when you're under pressure, you need to scan the ice before you get the puck. So you can still hold it, but you know what your options are, and then putting it to areas where guys could do something with it. And you look back at Settle's overtime goal, like Corey Perry makes the play to put the puck in an area where Connor McDavid can make a play. If he just cycles it down the boards, now he's got to pick it up off the boards, and that play, everyone's back in position. So absorbing pressure in those little games, absorb two guys, put it to an area, the next guy will have the opportunity to make the play that's going to create the goal. And we play this 3-on-3 game under the top of the circles, where it's two passes to change possession. And we let the guys do it, and they'll turn the puck over and they'll skate into the corner, and then there's no options. When they're actually on a turnover, they're on the inside of the offense. If they did two quick passes in front of the net, they got an empty net goal. And once we explain that you don't have to keep the puck and move it quick, they're scoring way more goals. But the tendency is turn the puck over, hold on to it, then let's see what we have versus what am I doing as soon as I get that puck. And we can build that IQ and that understanding. It goes a long way towards the end of seasons anyway.
What you just said, Brad, it's typical hockey, and what I call North America is you get the puck, you go with it, and you don't even look at options until you run out of space.
Yeah.
So recognizing that space, like Corey Perry did, he cycled it back because he knew that was going to be where the open area was.
And it wasn't perfect. It was on his backhand, but then it gave him an opportunity. It was the area that allowed an opportunity.
And then on
We
the
play that two pass game a lot. I learned that from Danny Heatley. Yeah, when the strike was on, I think it was 2:05 or whatever. I think he was still playing, or maybe it was a strike before. I can't remember. But him and another guy were going to the World Championship. So my son and I played at Father Bauer with him and this other guy that was going, and the two pass, and I would get the puck off her and skate around a little before it passed, and he was kind of getting mad at me. He said, "Just get the puck, move it right away. You don't have to take it back. You know, just boom, boom like that." And uh, that works really well. But I play hockey with Rich Preston on Tuesday nights, and Rico.
Yeah, I do. Coached against me.
Yeah, well, he always takes passes with one hand. He builds a wall, takes passes with one hand. And I said, Rico, how come you always receive it with one hand? He says, well, Gordy told me to, because he played a line with him in Houston for a couple of years. And he said the line was called him and Mark. So they called the line how, and who. But and he does that, and backhand passes makes receiving a backhand a lot easier, right? You get the puck, keeps your stick in the right angle. But he builds a little wall. He receives it, then he gets the two hands on the puck, but he protects it. You can't get at the puck. And I've never seen another guy do that. But
That's interesting. I actually teach even young kids. I have them do a drill where they're receiving with one hand.
yeah,
Because in my mind, it makes you place your stick properly. Because you
yeah, he
can't
gets it
you
like
can't have it
square.
at an angle. You have to be square, and then when you add your other hand, now you've got your stick in the right place to receive passes, and they start, especially the backhand, but even forehand is
Yeah.
they got to get their elbow up and they got to get strength. And I find it helps with their stick placement of where their stick needs to be. Because with the curves now, when they've got when it's not square, it flips up, it rolls up, and can't take backhands a lot of kids anyway. So
Yeah.
it's actually a
Well,
good teaching drill for me.
I
Yeah.
even do that like to teaching passes, the one hand,
Yeah.
so that that you have to take it and roll your wrist and the puck, kind of rolling towards the middle.
Brad, I want to talk about that because, and I want to repeat it to Tom, I've talked about this for years. Pass reception, passing isn't the problem, reception is. And the
Well,
biggest
passing
thing,
is also a problem.
well, the receiver gets open. You've got to be able to spin the puck when you pass it and pass to an area and locate it. But passes bounce off sticks because they're gripping the stick with two hands. And I picked
We were
this
just
up.
talking about that, Wally.
Yeah, I know I heard that. And the statement that I got from one of our female scouts who played in the American League, coaching his daughter's AAA midget team, he had them target with one hand and catch with two, whether it was forehand or backhand. When you think of that, Brad, you can extend the stick to provide a more visible target. You can angle the blade to be square to the incoming puck. And when you catch with two,
Ooh.
it's a softer reception. So I think this is something that I watch. They're squeezing that bottom hand grip. It bounces off. They can't catch it. Um, can you elaborate on the passing side and what you feel can be improved? Because I've always said passing is a problem because they forget to spin it rather they try to slap it. But
Well, I think part of it, Wally, is the sticks now are made for shooting. Like we had sticks that absorbed passes, whether they be wood or whatever. But it's a lot of for me is the angle. I'm not a big fan of the cradle. I hate teaching the young kids to cradle because essentially the puck always goes under their stick, and I get guys now they want to do these quick little toe drag type puck receptions, and the puck just flips up and is gone. Um, I try to, for me, it's like do you see an NHL guy actually, a pro guy cradle a pass where, he catches it first contact and then he cradles it back. So,
yeah,
um, it's, I think
is
it's
that
taught wrong,
is that
but
blocking? Like that's a concept that I've heard from a lot of skills coaches is uh, just block the puck.
I call it tapping it. Like, and
Yeah,
that's where when I use a one-handed drill,
yeah,
you kind of got to tap the puck timing wise. You just give it a little tap or a bunt, and
yeah,
for me, when you have two hands, you bunt the puck to where you need it to go next. So if you're shooting, if you're passing,
yeah.
whatever it is, I just call it. That's how I explain it to the guys.
Good, good point. Excellent points. Uh, Brad, for next year, how many players are you losing, and how many returning type of thing, and what are you looking for?
Uh, it honestly changes by the day. We could have five, six, seven back. We could have three back. It's just the landscape of hockey right now. Unfortunately, I think there's guys aren't playing 4 or 5 years in the same place like I did. I think my from 16 to 24, I played on two teams, so lots of turnover, and we try to find for me kids that they want to learn that they have to have the IQ, and then there's got to be a mix of the compete's got to be up there. Can't just have the fast guys, the skill guys. We gotta have a mix of everything. The right. I always say when we first make the team, we're not looking for the best players. We're looking for the right players, and to fit in with each other and within the team. I think we found you can have a highly skilled player, but if the personality or the attitude doesn't click, we're not going to go very far as a team when things get tough. And we found that over the years is we got to find the right temperament. And when we brought guys in this year towards the end of the year, also what kind of personalities are we bringing in? We've got a really tight group, good group, maybe more on the quiet side, but the guys we brought in were not big personalities, just went about their business and contributed. And I think it makes an easier change towards the end of the year. And you see it now in the NHL with, I would say, with Florida and Marchand. Like you brought in a lot of times bringing in those type of players doesn't work for teams, but obviously it's working really well with him coming in, and he's smart enough to know that he's not trying to change anything and just add to what Florida already has. But when you have good leadership, I think you can make those changes.
How does the coach, and I can talk about you and your team, but I'm thinking in the back of my mind, a guy like Florida's head coach, how does what role, what influence do they play in that leadership? Using it, creating it, reinforcing it.
I think it's just for now for him, it's probably just small reminders and conversations, making sure everyone's doing the right thing. They've been there 3 years in a row with a lot of those guys. I think they know what it takes. From my understanding, is the very good leadership. So you kind of stay out of that, but you're probably making sure those conversations are happening even behind the scenes with certain guys, making sure big part of it is not the top guys, but keeping the guys engaged that are who's next to come in, or how are those guys doing that aren't in the lineup when you're going to need them, and make sure they're engaged and doing well as well.
The I'm thinking more here of the NHL, but this playoff, how important is officiating relative to affecting the outcome? Like,
Yeah. Well, you can see like last game how it went. I felt a couple soft calls. Like, does Brad Marchand grab Kane's stick and throw it in his face and snap his head back? Is it a soft cross checking call? I think absolutely, and that those they ended up scoring on one of those, and that kind of made it 2-0. So the timing of it's you hope at that stage that the referees can be at the top of their game, but it's hard. And we see it at our level. If guys are, you don't know what, for our level anyway, you don't know what went on during the day for a said referee or person. He could be having a terrible day and you don't know that. So you kind of got to understand that there's lots going on, but I think you want a little bit better than you saw last game at that level and stage, especially early on. As the game went on, they had to control it, but it can be the difference on those judgment calls, so to say.
well, when I watched the game, I I highlighted some of those penalties that I felt embellishment occurred, and they were all in the area of the goaltender. And I go back to the one where when they run into the goalie, and the goalie exaggerated his fall. Another time, the defenseman who pushed the player being pushed, exaggerated his running into the goalie. Penalties occurred in both instances. It's like getting to be an art and a part of the net zone area game, the goalie front game. And it sort of frightens me because you they are taking advantage of a split second moment where force is created and balance is lost and contact is made and penalties are being called. And that's what concerns me. That makes a job really difficult for a referee, but I think it's affected the outcome if in one or if not both of the games. It played a part in the goals resulting from the penalty being called. So I don't envy the officials at all for the role they've got to do, but I think players are starting to become a little bit too disrespectful of the nature of the game to take advantage of that. But it's the game within the game.
Oh, you've seen it throughout. There was another series where the guy snapped his head back and the stick didn't touch. It might have been Oilers. I think it was Oilers in Dallas, right? It's tough. Tough to make those calls, or the first overtime game with too many men on the ice. Clearly too many men, but they don't want to make that call then, so they don't.
Yeah.
And you know, ideally, in my mind, there's two or three each, and it's scoring chances as much as you can. It even a high stick now, if it glances or whatever, does it really have an effect on the game? And that's with the head snap. So it's tough. It's tough, and goalies don't fight through anything. It'd be nice to see that. Hey, I'm going to fight through this and trust that if it's actually interference, they're going to call it. But they look for that excuse almost, right?
I listened to a elite referee. I think he's, did one NCAA or something, and he said that in basketball you could call every 5 seconds. And he said basically what a good ref looks for is something that takes away or creates a scoring chance or something that's going to hurt somebody, you know, but you don't call everything. Because all that specialty teams, hockey becomes more like basketball and standing around. And I don't find it that exciting to watch when it's just power play, penalty kill all game.
It'd be nice if, sometimes it's the soccer and play on. You're defending, a guy steps on your stick. Is it a trip? Probably. Was anything going on? No. So not even on a turnover, you're not creating a scoring chance. So maybe you save one, the other team does the same thing, and now there's no, it's unfortunate. You're not trying to trip a guy, but step on your stick and he falls down. It's a penalty, and it's an easy call for the referee because there's no judgment. They can say, well, you tripped him. Versus now you can almost break a guy's arm, but he kept the puck, so we're not calling that at a certain time of the game.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that the referees at that level are having the conversations we're having.
I'm sure they're watching it too, and being told but it's that hard in the split second.
Yeah.
Especially on the embellishment, you don't know how hard or how bad, and there's lots going on.
Yeah. Brad, just getting back to officiating in your league and the Centennial Cup, what was your take on the officiating overall?
I think it got better. The one thing I do like is being there 2 years, they have a head guy and two supervisors that are there every game, and they're really working with the guys on what they want the standard to be. And we've seen it 2 years in a row. They call the guys in. They're all from different leagues. A lot of them haven't worked together. Saskatchewan, Manitoba have a different standard than Alberta on what they call. So they work with the guys on trying to get where they need to be by the final weekend. And there's ups and downs. I think early they're like, well, we got to show them we're good. We can see all these things. And obviously some guys are better than others. And to me, it was okay. I think I didn't think one guy was very good, and I could tell. The biggest thing for me is when a supervisor or a guy in charge acknowledges that it wasn't good. I didn't like this, because you don't see that a lot. And he actually tells the guy that, like, you weren't very good tonight. And he'll tell that. And for a coach, that goes a long way, because a lot of times you don't see accountability on that side for an off night. It's always, oh no, it's a good call. But when you actually hear, you know what, we've told them that's not what we want. Because for me, when my players are bad, they're not playing. They might get scratched, whatever, and it can be a little bit sensitive. And I think unfortunately they sometimes need to be told that you weren't very good tonight, and that's okay. But we have to be able to accept that and work within those parameters. And I know the guy at the Centennial Cup for sure. It's a small tournament. He does that, and they have long meetings and they go over video, and it, I'm sure they do that at higher levels. But as a referee coming up, I don't think you get that support as well. So that you have to understand that they don't get a lot of supports.
I think the most frustrating thing when you're coaching is you've been working on, maybe angling or, playing one-on-ones and, some guy does absolutely perfect and they get a penalty. And you wonder what the heck.
Yeah, it's interesting if they ever change it, how they do it. They get a guy upstairs on a mic that's overseeing more. I wish they would discuss sometimes. Let's get together and talk about, was that a boarding penalty? Like you're right there and you can see what happened. This guy's way down the ice, and just talk. No, it wasn't that bad. Okay, we're good. We'll just let it go. But that that I think is a big thing in game. Let's discuss. And I feel like in Europe they do that a little bit more. The linesmen have a little bit more input. Is, you know what? It's not actually a penalty. We're not trying to show anyone up. It's just from my angle it looked like it. These guys said it was okay, or the stick missed. That actually wasn't a high stick. He just snapped his head back, and it's not a
Yeah.
penalty. And that doesn't happen, right? It's if they always back each other up mid game. And I think if that mentality could ever change, where it's okay to make a mistake. Yep, we're good. I saw it differently. I thought it was a penalty, but move on, or whatever it may be.
You thought the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, there was some hits from behind that were really dangerous that never got called. But one the guy got hit from behind, head first in the boards, and he got an embellishing penalty.
Yeah, Rodriguez.
Yeah, so it was the other way on that. I thought someone was going to break their neck there because they were allowing so much of the hitting from behind.
Well, one other question related to referees, Brad, that over the years I've seen coaches who abused referees verbally from the stands, a lot of ejections and emotional reaction to referees trying to influence them. And it usually backfires. But how do you play a referee, or do you as a coach at your level, Brad?
No, I think there's times it gets emotional. You know, you try to, I think there is some gamesmanship to it. You try to plant some seeds sometimes, and it depends. I think as you get to know the guys, it depends how you do it. If it was a bad call, you're maybe it's your captain. If you got to let them know, and then they're gonna even it up. But a lot of times, the more you get on them, the more they're just going to give you another penalty. To be honest, and it's same as the players. It's not there's certain guys that they'll go back and forth with you. They'll scream back and forth, and then they like that and they move on. Like it's not a big deal. Some guys, that's the end of the world. So you got to know the guys. Um, but for the most part, it's for me as a coach, the best like is a guy just coming over and say, "Hey, I missed that," or this is what I saw. This is why I'm in. There's not much you can do if he's being honest about it. He'll watch for it next time or whatever. And it's the communication is good. Then there's usually it's the frustration I think builds when there's no communication. You got to accept sometimes that's the way they saw it and that's the way it is. And it may be right, may be wrong.
Well, just from hearing you talk, you obviously respect the referee and the referee respects you. It's sort of a mutual because you're in the game for the same reason. You want it to be
Uh,
a
uh,
great.
uh, yeah, and I think the best guys, and they understand that it doesn't go from game to game. There's things that happen in the game where everyone gets emotional,
Yeah,
and we respect each other as people of the game. And if you carry that into the next game or wherever, like it doesn't work. And it it's interesting to run into some guys away from the rink and then talk with them and see their perspective. Not even about the Canucks, but they're people too, and
yeah,
everyone's trying to make something of the game and move to another level, etc.
yeah. I think, one of the things that our group, Brad, the mottos that I've talk about is the good of the game. And uh, what a game. I mean, at your level, the NHL level, I mean, we're obviously all, three of us and all the Sharks that are around just love it so much. The passion for us to be there. And the reason we're there is to make the game better. And when you do reach the top of the mountain at your level, it's got to be pretty satisfying to finally get there. And I'm sure a new challenge trying to repeat. So
Yeah, it definitely is in this landscape with the player turnover is makes it interesting, and I think that's hockey now. You're going to see it at the WHL and the college level. You're not going to have good players very long. You might only have them for a year, so you got to make the most of it.
They're changing the rules almost every year, eh? They make that BC league, and now they can all go to the
Yeah,
NCAA.
yeah,
But now NCAA is limited to 26 players, so they won't have 30 guys. So they, you
which is
know,
good. It's going to be interesting how it all plays out because it's different going from playing 68 games a year to going to play 30 games a year, maybe not in the lineup every night, uh, going to school. Imagine you haven't gone to school for 4 years. Now you're going full time school and you've got this pro contract hanging over you. Do I really want to be here doing this when know, be
yeah,
going
and
there?
it's a good alternative for, I guess, if you're drafted, if you go play university. But if you've signed, like I'm thinking of Basha, he signed,
You,
so he
you
can't go
can't
to
go.
university. But
No.
that would be great for him after playing against older guys, after missing
Yes.
all season, except for a couple of weeks at the end.
And those kind of guys, I think it would be beneficial for. I'm not sold on the 17, 18 year olds quite yet.
Yeah.
Unless they're super high end guys. It'll be interesting how they do, and if they get the ice time, like it's okay to throw up 100 point season and then go throw up 100 points at 18 and then go at 19 and then go pro or whatever. But if
Yeah.
you haven't taken over the level you're at, is it okay? Slow down.
Well,
I think kids should slow down.
a lot of guys they have to go to junior, they can't go pro. And like Matthews went to Europe. I think that would be a good alternative for a guy like Basha. Go and
Yeah.
play in Europe against men and you know,
And now that he's signed, he probably can't do that. But that was before Matthews was drafted, right? I
yeah.
guess until you're signed, you could do it. So it'd be interesting how the dynamics, and now that they're getting paid. So say you stay in the Western League and you don't sign your pro contract, but you can go to school and they're going to pay you $100,000. Well, what are you going
Yeah.
to do?
Well, that's gonna be like I played up at Midgey and they don't have that huge of a budget. I don't know how they're gonna, you know, pay
Yeah,
compete with places that are like Minnesota, totally different, eh?
yeah, they probably won't, but maybe they get, and it may help them. Maybe they're getting guys they're not paying, but they're going to be there for 2 or 3 years where they can grow because those guys making the big money. So McKenna, he's going to go for 1 year, right?
Yeah.
So you got him for 1 year, but you're not building. But I guess you get the next guy and the next guy. But hopefully, some teams can be smart and get the guys that they can build with a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess they're different. And then places like Penticton's going into the dub.
Yeah.
And didn't they have to pay a couple of million to get in it?
Yeah, at least a couple million, I think, for the franchise, and at least a couple million to Kelowna for territorial rights because they're down the
Yeah,
street.
yeah. But they get good fan support there and they got a great rink. So
But be interesting how it all plays out in the next couple of years of, I think, player rights too. I think that's part of the bargaining agreement. Like your CHL guy, the NHL teams keep you for 2 years. I mean, but if you go to school, they get you till you're done. So
yeah.
that's gotta change somehow. Maybe they keep the guys. I think it changes where you keep the guys longer, where those college guys can't play 4 years and become a free agent. Like we drafted you, you play for us, and then I think that could be coming. And
That's a tough rule.
yeah,
You got a high draft pick like Calgary lost that guy that went to New York, a defenseman.
yeah, Fox, and that was my situation. I wasn't drafted my first at 17, but I was
Yeah,
drafted at 18. So then I had two really good years, 100-point seasons. So then when I finished my 20-year-old year, I could have signed with Buffalo, who had drafted me, or I could have waited till June 1st and be a UFA, and I had a bidding war with a number of teams. So Buffalo, small market team, didn't have money to kind of as a signing bonus, but other teams, as soon as June 1 hit, like, hey, we'll sign you. So it benefited me being drafted a year later because then I got to be that UFA. But should Buffalo have had more rights? Maybe, right? Probably. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting what they do, and I just know like the NHLPA, they don't really care so much about the draft picks per se because they haven't been in the league. They're not paying dues. So if they're going to give up stuff, it's like, well, we'll give up that, and then once you're in the league, you'll have the rights more so. So it'll be interesting how that plays out.
yeah. It was fun going to Sweden there, and just before I left, they picked up Riker Evans, and he didn't get drafted till his second year of eligibility, and Canada picked up him, and Wally and I coached him in Bantam, so it was kind of nice to see him there.
And I can't even remember how long they keep the European guys they draft. They might keep them forever.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. They probably own your rights.
so then it could be, I could see it changing similar over here, at least till your first contract or maybe somebody trades for your rights. So at
Yeah,
least, hey, okay, you're going to this team. Well, they're going to give up a seventh round draft pick back or something for you because they've done that. I could see that happening as well.
yeah. Well, the landscape sure certainly is changing. How do you think your league about attracting people? How's that going to go?
It's still hard. There's still a perception that the BCHL is better
Yeah,
from the schools and the advisors, and I don't think it is, and it'll fade out. But they they don't know. Basically, now you got to almost make it to the CHL to get a scholarship or the USHL. So it'll be interesting how this year plays out. With are these guys that much better when they get to school, or I find
but it
because our league,
changes all the time. I remember that Gene Riley, who coached, did a lot of recruiting for NCAA, like did one teams. He stayed at my house, and Alberta, like a year or two ago, was ranked ahead of Saskatchewan, but the Alberta showcase was going on, and the coaches didn't even want him to go that. They wanted him going to Saskatchewan because they produced a few players and they thought Saskatchewan's a better league. And I know
yeah,
BC's had their day that, so it kind of flip flops
it's
who
ups and
they consider,
downs and
right?
ups and downs and giving a guy a chance. It'll be interesting how it all plays out here in the next year or two and what each league becomes and the partnership that we're getting with the Western League now and development and how they want that to work.
Do you, Can they get your guys and play games and go back and forth like affiliates?
Yes, so they can now more so than ever. They can take guys up and send them back, and they could always do that, but there's a bigger partnership in Western Canada being done, so to say. Ontario kind of has it with the Junior B League, the OJHL, where that's where London Knights send all their players and develop them, and they're good every year because they're old. They're heavy
Yeah,
on 18, 19, 20s. They send their young guys to develop instead of sitting on the bench essentially in their league. So lots of
yeah,
models. We'll see how it's day by day. It's unfortunate there's going to be player turnover. The Western League, I think, is going to be a tryout, a true tryout versus, well, these are the guys we have. But my 19-year-olds were better than a lot of 16, 17-year-olds in the Western League.
yeah.
So do they get that opportunity? It just depends on the teams, I guess.
Yeah, landscape's really changed.
Brad, your under 20 players, graduating players, what's the future for them?
Well, a lot of them are U Sport option has really opened up now because U Sport can't get the WHL guys anymore. So there could be two or three at UFC, one or two at U of A. I've got one going down Division three in the NCAA is still an option. They'll take any of our players. So that's what it looks like for them, which is good to have that U Sport option open up for them because that's still good hockey. Um, we'll see how that plays out, and I'm starting to wonder if U Sports could be a stepping stone for the late bloomers now into Division One because a lot of U Sport kids have left down to the US now. So
They don't have to sit a year or anything?
no, not anymore.
Yeah, because that
So
was always the thing before, right? Did
yeah,
you get a guy they had to sit a year and back and forth? And
and a lot of them were CHL players in U Sport that weren't eligible, but now they are. So if you can't get to the Western League because you're a late bloomer, do you go to school at 20, have a good year, and then kind of jump ship because there's not a lot of loyalty. So we'll see how it
well, that
plays
was
out.
an advantage the ACAC had because as long as you were a student, you could play. So there was no sitting out
Yeah.
years. So I coached in that league quite a while, and that
Now
was
that
one
they have
advantage.
the transfer portal down there and kids are moving left and right, there's no sitting out anymore. So it's a different game. That's for sure in that sense.
Yeah. Well, I think I got to get on with my life here.
Yeah, I got to run too.
So all of
Still there,
your
Wally?
volumes off.
I think you're muted.
So, Brad, are you going to the 2000 the 1994 induction?
I think I'm going to try to get up there. Yeah, I'd like to. We just got the email from Wayne, so try to get up there and support that.
Okay, we'll see you there. You guys take care, and we'll stay in touch.
Thanks, Wally. See you
Okay,
guys.
bye
Thank
bye.
you, Brad. Bye bye.
See ya.
Well, Wally, you have a good day.
I will. Thanks very much for everything, Tom.
Okay, talk to you later.
Bye bye.
Hello?
Did you call me?
I did, Coach. I did. I just need a favor from you. When you're phoning me now, I'm getting a new number. You call me both on my email and my phone. Okay? So don't use my wife. I don't like it because I got several calls from other people this morning again. So I'll give you a new number as soon as I get it. Can I do that?
Yep.
How are you doing?
I'm trying to figure things out. Like I almost have to talk to your wife to make sure that I can communicate with you to get to you to go to that ceremony in Red Deer. I don't want you to miss out on that. So I do need her number. I'm still going to have to call her. I'm relying on Dan as well to make sure that happens. So it's going to be in Red Deer, Don,
Yeah, where?
on the 19th of July.
Okay, when's the 19th? Okay.
See, that's my point. I have to tell Rita because she'll remember and she's got to help follow up to remind you.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we'll do that. And
So you tell her I'm still going to be calling her on her number. I do have your cell number, but I have to call her to try to,
no, I understand that.
to find out if I can take you for coffee and when you're available, that kind of thing. So I'm just trying to help out here. That's all.
No, that was done.
Yeah.
So all that works sometimes. I've got a lot of people calling you all of a sudden. No, that's not it. From your home office, sometimes it's difficult when you haven't been for a long time. So,
Yeah.
I know what I'm going, but I appreciate it. So, right?
Okay.